Welcome to Get Paid for Your Pad, the definitive show on Airbnb hosting, featuring the best advice on how to maximize profits from your Airbnb listing, as well as real-life experiences from Airbnb hosts all over the world. Welcome. We are your hosts, Josefa Kapadia and Jasper Rivers.
Get paid for your pad. 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 Get paid for your pad.
Hi everyone, welcome to episode number 80 of Get Paid for Your Pad. And I'm going to start out with some really good news because, as many of you are probably aware, the city of San Francisco tried to ban Airbnb. They put up this thing called Proposition F, which aimed to restrict short-term home and apartment rentals. And just a few hours ago, it was rejected by 55% of the votes, and thereby it's not going through, this whole plan. So a little victory on the Airbnb front, which is obviously something that we are all very happy about. And my guest today is also very happy about this. His name is Doug. Doug, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jasper.
And Doug works for Everbooked. And you guys might be familiar with Everbooked. I'll let Doug explain what exactly Everbooked does. We've had the CEO, David, on the podcast before, so maybe you have listened to his episode. But in case you're new to Everbooked, Doug, please explain, what is Everbooked, what do you do, and how can you help Airbnb hosts?
Oh, sure. Happy to do that, Jasper. I just want to comment on what you brought up. First, though, that Proposition F, the ballot measure in San Francisco. So, yeah, that definitely is good news. There are already laws in place in San Francisco, and they really just only went into effect in February of this year. So they're evolving and they're working on, making sure more people are registering, and they're beefing up their enforcement of it. And really that's the way to go, because that can evolve with this incredible emerging phenomenon of home sharing, led by Airbnb hosts, but other platforms as well. So I think that's really a great thing, because if you're familiar at all with California politics, what happens is with these ballot measures, they kind of do an end run around the legislative process, and they go right to the voters, and it's a referendum, and that's fine. But what happens is things kind of get locked down, and you can't really change it over time, and unless by a court challenge and things like that. And really, this phenomenon is so young that you would be hamstringing yourself to lock in like that. So we were definitely following that, and very pleased for the hosts in San Francisco that are counting on Airbnb for supplemental income and to stay in their homes as well, and to continue to be the great ambassadors that they are in that city and other places where they are in the world. So glad you brought that up. And we're pleased to see the result as well for hosts in San Francisco. And of course, for our own business as well, it's a good thing if people are able to do more short-term rentals and do it within a reasonable framework. So that's great. So to get to your question, Jasper, what is Everbooked? So we are a dynamic pricing service for Airbnb hosts. So what that means is that we monitor many sources of demand, and we raise prices when demand is higher. This is for individual hosts, whether you've got multiple listings or you've got one listing. And then we, on the flip side, when demand is lower relative to supply, we will lower the price, all in an effort to maximize your overall revenue. It's an optimal pricing type of service we have, Jasper. And then on top of that, we're providing a lot of market intelligence as well.
Right, and in recent months, you guys have really done some awesome stuff on the market intelligence front. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Well, we have in order to do the dynamic pricing piece, you can imagine we are combing through, massive amounts of data, and it's on a daily basis. It's a huge operation just on the data gathering side, Jasper. So, we're doing that primarily to help people optimally price to make more money with their listings. But while we are doing that data gathering, we can use it in different ways. So one of the ways that we introduced sort of a new method of using that data was in June, and we introduced a comps tool. So this allowed hosts to go in, or actually even if it wasn't your own listing, you would just put in any listing and you could pull up quickly and easily a set of the other listings on Airbnb that would be most similar to that reference property. You could see at a glance, sort of what their average price had been, their high, their low price, and you can even get, especially with our higher versions, Everbooked Pro, you can get more data, such as a look at what their revenue was per month, on average over the last year for these similar properties. So that was the first thing that we introduced in June. So again, using this data in a different way. And then more recently in September, we rolled out a market reports function, I guess you would say, that provides you now the, sort of the overall context. So if you're looking within your city and you want to see how you're doing relative to the average host, you can answer that type of question. Or if you're thinking of, you maybe want to move to another area, or you're wondering whether you should even list your place on Airbnb or not, you can get an idea as to how much money you might make using these sorts of tools.
Yeah, and I think one of the other uses, like I get a lot of questions from current Airbnb hosts who are being very successful because obviously they read Get Paid for Your Pad, and now they're making a lot of money. And so they ask me, hey, I want to expand. Like, what would be a good place to start my next listing? And it's always hard for me to say, because sometimes I get a question from someone who lives in a city that I've never been to, and so I really don't have much to say or much information to offer. And now with those tools that you guys are providing, it suddenly becomes very easy to find a good location, because you can literally just check out how much are people making in different neighborhoods, in different cities, and based on that, you can sort of calculate what your expected rate of return would be on a property.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And you can also drill down and take a look and see, is it a sort of a two-bedroom apartment that does really well? Is it something other than that? Is there a particular kind of approach that these folks have to maybe extra fees or cleaning fees? You can really get an idea. And like you say, especially on the average revenue, you can get a sense for that, and then you're doing your calculations. All you need to know other than that are the cost side, right? Like, what's it costing you to rent that place or to mortgage that place, whatever it is that you're doing. That part you've got to figure out on your own, but we're at least helping you to get a real sense as to what other, and especially active hosts, I should say, Jasper, because one of the things that we do right away is we provide you a filter that kind of separates the wheat from the chaff. There are a lot of folks and a lot of listings on Airbnb that are somewhat stagnant. People put them on there, and they're not really putting a lot of attention on those particular listings. They did it really casually. So we can allow you to filter that out and focus on the active listings. So that gives you a better idea of what the true, what's really happening in the market if you're making a concerted effort with your listing. I think what we do is provide the kind of data, whether you're a casual host or whether you're a little bit more serious, we've got something for you. In fact, we just introduced in September, when we brought out these market reports, a new subscription level for Everbooked. It's called Everbooked Pro, and with that subscription, you get a better rate in terms of what we charge you, and we give you the best access to data. So that's for those folks that are a little bit more serious. The other people that are on the other end of the spectrum, or they don't feel they need that, they can come in as an Everbooked account holder, and you still get some of the benefits of that data. And of course, you get our automatic pricing, which is really the sort of the mainstay of what we're offering, Jasper.
Yeah, you make a very good point, because this was actually going to be my next question, because I would never use the average income that Airbnb hosts are making in a certain area as a good predictor of what I expect to make, because there's also people who don't rent out 100% of the time. And so those average earnings will get pulled down by that. And like you said, there's also a lot of people who are just not taking the Airbnb hosting very serious, or they're not very focused on making a lot of money. Maybe they're just enjoying the the process of hosting some people every now and then, and they're not so much focused on really trying to optimize their business. So I think that's great that you can sort of select the 10-20% highest earners on the using the tool, so that you can really see, like, okay, what's the potential if I really put in a lot of effort.
Yeah, and the cutoff rate we're using for one of the things we're using to determine whether they're active hosts or not would be recent occupancy levels above something like 30% or so, and a couple of other factors that we take into account. So I think that's absolutely right, Jasper. These are in many ways kind of conservative estimates. To your point, not all hosts make their places available all the time, so that's point number one. And the other thing is that there are just a lot of things you can do to be a better Airbnb host, and a ton of tips you get from Jasper's website and some of the other great pieces of content that you're putting out there, Jasper, and the example that you provide as well as a host. You can do a lot better using these kind of well-known approaches, just making sure your listing looks really good and your description is attractive to people. You got to catch them in those first few moments, so that they can dive into your listing a little bit more and make that inquiry and make that booking. And there's just so many things that you can do if you really keep your eyes and ears open and learn from other hosts, that you can do better than these average revenues that we're reporting to you.
Right, so let's backtrack a little bit here. You mentioned a couple things. So Everbooked is a dynamic pricing app, but you also have a comparison tool, and you have a market report analysis tool. So there's really three things. Now, I imagine for the people who are listening, and for those who haven't heard of Everbooked and this is all new, they might get a little bit confused. So I wanted to just break it down step by step, so that people can understand, hey, what is it that's out there for free? What do we have to pay for? How does it work? So let's start with the dynamic pricing app. If somebody wants to use the app, how much does it cost?
So the dynamic pricing, the way we charge for that is 1% of your bookings. So the reason we did that, there's a couple of reasons for that. One is to make it pretty simple. It's just, there's no mystery as to how we charge for our service. The other reason is that that's scalable. So let's say, you have a month and you're not using, your home, let's say, so you're not renting out your place at all. Well, we don't charge you anything for that month because you wouldn't have any bookings. Other months when you're away a little bit more, it's kind of a scalable way of charging. It's basically a commission type of an approach on what we charge for our fee, so that 1%. So it's simple and it's scalable. The other thing, Jasper, about our pricing is that you can you can do the calculations pretty easily. If we are able to return to you an incremental 10% in revenue, or let's say it's 20%, and at the extreme, if someone comes into us and they were using just one flat price and the price was too low and it just wasn't at all optimal, we can improve revenues as high as 40%. So when you look at that, it's a super easy calculation on the ROI side. So if we improve your revenues by 10%, we're charging you 1%. That's a 10x return. So that's how we charge people for pricing with our regular Everbooked account. On the Everbooked Pro side, the way we do our fees, Jasper, we charge $100 per month, and then we drop that rate. Instead of charging 1%, we charge 0.75% of your booking. So that's, again, that's for the more serious host, Everbooked Pro. It's for the person that has more revenue coming in per month to make that math work, or they really just want to dive in and get more of that market and comp data that I referred to earlier.
Right. And, I think it's almost a no-brainer if you are setting just a one price for every single day throughout the year, then I'm pretty confident that a pricing app like Everbooked would really increase your income a lot. But it's not just the income; it's also the fact that you never have to update your calendar anymore. Because I used to, when I started out, I spent so much time calculating the optimal price. I have an econometrics background, so I love math and I love calculations. So
right,
I spent hours and hours just calculating what my optimal price would be. But it's such a complicated problem because you just don't know how much demand there is, right? And you guys have all this data. You have all these smart people with algorithm stuff. So I don't know how I am going to be by myself. How I'm going to be smarter than your algorithm. So once the pricing apps came onto the market, I completely surrendered immediately to it. Now you guys aren't available in Amsterdam, unfortunately, so I haven't had the privilege of testing your service yet. But I'm sure it's doing pretty well. But the other thing I wanted to ask you is there any sort of way for people to try out Everbooked for a while for free?
Well, yeah, they absolutely can, Jasper, and so let me come to that. I think also, though, to your point earlier, just to sort of walk before we run here a little bit. Let me explain a bit more as to what goes into our dynamic pricing so that people can get a feel for that. As you were saying, how do you know what's happening out there with demand if you're an individual person and doing this yourself? Even if you can get the information, it takes a lot of time. So, time savings is a huge thing that we can bring to you with our dynamic pricing. We also call it automatic pricing, partly for that reason, Jasper. It's happening in the background, and it's really saving you a lot of time. But let me just let your listeners know what kinds of things we're looking at when it comes to demand. So we have general travel demand data. We've got a very good feel as to what the seasonality is in your area, and everything that we do at Everbooked. The systems that we build, we really take a kind of hyper local approach to building things out. So we get seasonality data down to the lowest level that we can, below obviously a state, it would be a region, and if we can get lower than that, we will. We also look at what's happening with hotels. That's an indicator of demand. When we look at other Airbnbs, we're not looking just at how many of those Airbnbs have been booked in your area, but we look at the Airbnbs that are most similar to your Airbnb, and as those become more booked, we would bump up your price. Then we look at day of week data. So, most places have a pattern. Many of them have the pattern, which is, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday are pretty slow days, I should say. Thursday picks up a little bit, and then the weekend is the highest. So again, we take a look at what the most successful hosts are doing in your area, so hyper localized from a day of week sort of pattern, and we build that into your pricing. So those are some of the things. We've even got flight data that we're looking at. So we're doing all that heavy lifting, and when I say we, I mean it's not people that work at Everbooked. It's our computers monitoring this, because it's really a great job for for a digital worker. Let's put it that way. And then we're adjusting your price up or down relative to we call it an unadjusted price. You could think of it as a sort of a midpoint price. We adjust your price up or down relative to that based on those demand factors and supply, the supply situation. So that's what we're doing. Also, to let your folks know, you can adjust that midpoint a little bit. We have ways, and we can get into this if you want to, Jasper, as to how we come up with an initial price for you, because I think we're taking a pretty sophisticated approach to that, especially relative to our peers in the marketplace. So you can change that midpoint, and you can also set a minimum price. People ask us about that because they're worried, if I go with Everbooked's pricing, are they going to, list my place at such a low price that I'm not going to be happy with it? Well, you can set a minimum. So that's a little bit on how our dynamic pricing or our automatic pricing works. Jasper, you were asking me something there. Oh, you were asking if people could try it out first. So long-winded, but coming back to your question, the answer is yes. So we have a free trial. So there's really, a great way for you to come into Everbooked. You just go to everbooked.com and sign up, and you will get a free trial if you come to us directly. Better than that, though, if you come to us and you use Jasper's code, get paid for your pad, just those initials. What are those initials, Jasper?
So it's GPYFP, get paid for your pad. Did I say it correctly?
Right. Just like your jingle, yeah. So if you use that code when you come to us, we'll give you 90 days to try Everbooked. So that's great. Or if you come to us through Jasper's website. So any of those methods, that's going to be the best way. And the other thing is, let's say, you don't get it directly, but you heard about Everbooked on this podcast that Jasper has, you just ping us afterwards and you say, hey, Doug or whomever is available on support. I heard about you on Jasper's website. Can you make sure I have that 90-day deal? And we will code that as coming from Jasper and get paid for your pad.
Awesome. So everybody can go ahead and check it out for 90 days. And what about the tools? What about the comms tools and the market analysis tools?
Yeah. So that thank you for asking that question, Jasper. So again, relative to other choices you might have out there, Everbooked is providing you these other tools: the comps tool, the comparable listings tool, and the market reports. Essentially, we are giving those to you as a bonus, just for having the automatic pricing on board, whereas our peers in the marketplace are really just providing you that automatic pricing or the dynamic pricing piece. So we're really the only ones that bring you those three services in one, and we're not charging any extra for that with our our entry level Everbooked account. Again, on the Everbooked Pro account, when you really want to go deeper into the comparable listings or the market reports, that's where you're paying $100 a month for the subscription. But then we give you a break on the fees. So, it just really depends on your situation. If anyone's at all unclear when they come to us, hey, Doug, I heard you on Jasper's podcast. What should I go for, Everbooked or Everbooked Pro? We will help you make a decision that makes the most sense for you. Hello, Jasper, are you there?
So, if people want to check out that comparable listings tool and
Mm-hmm.
the markets reports tool, because I can imagine there might be people who are saying, yeah, I might be interested, but I really want to see how much value that those tools bring me. So, is there a way
Yeah.
for people to sort of check it out on your website, or just to see like what type of data they would get?
Yeah, so even without an account at Everbooked, you can get some of this information. So you just go to everbooked.com, all one word, and right there, the top right, we give you a menu for the three services: automatic pricing, comparable listings, and market reports. And you can go in there and try us on a sort of a demo basis. Put in your Airbnb URL or your Airbnb listing number, and we'll give you some data there. You can also, for example, with our market reports, you could put in, a city in the U.S. We cover, by the way, the majority of the U.S. We just expanded within the country, so we've got most of the U.S. now. You can put in a city and start to get some data on market reports. So even without creating an account, Jasper, you can get a feel for the kind of information that we provide and the types of services that we're offering.
Awesome. Yeah, I've checked it out, and it's really interesting. It's really fun to play around with some cities too and see how much people are making. What's next?
What's next? Well, let's see. We've got the U.S. down. We've really focused a lot on creating these kind of incredible offerings for our clients, our current clients, and future clients. So that's been a big part of what we've been doing, Jasper, is building out those sort of three-in-one services. I just mentioned we increased our coverage in the U.S., and next it's going to be, expanding globally, and then we will be looking to, adding other platforms on there. So right now we're focused exclusively on Airbnb. Part of the reason for that is that it's such a fascinating platform. It's growing really fast. The hosts that are on Airbnb are, just as a sort of a general rule, a really great group of people to work with, an interesting group, so we've been really focused on Airbnb, but we do have clients ask us, well, do you, what about data from, say, VRBO or from FlipKey and these kinds of things? So, we'll be doing some expansion in that area, also reaching out more to some of these, kind of vacation rental management approaches, because, that once you've got this dynamic pricing piece, and I didn't even talk about the algorithm so much, Jasper, really just that data gathering piece, but the algorithm is something that's really important to work on. We've been doing a lot of that over time, improving that constantly from the time we first came to market, which was roughly a year ago. You'll recall we were speaking with you. It was around November at the Airbnb Open, which was in San Francisco. So we came out with a good algorithm at the time, and we've just been strengthening that. So once you get that under your belt and you've had a lot of experience and you're making that stronger, you can then expand, to these other platforms and so forth.
All very exciting. Well, I really look forward to seeing what you guys will come up with in the next year, because you guys have only been around for a year, and I think it's pretty cool what you've built so far. Before I
Thank
let
you.
you go, Doug, is there anything else you wanted to share with our listeners?
Well, I guess those were probably the main things. I'd alluded to these valuation methods that we do. I guess I'll just mention briefly about that, Jasper. There's kind of two things that we do when we're pricing a new listing, and one is coming up with that initial price. So that in itself is, not only important, but it's a difficult task to do. And as I mentioned, I think we are perhaps the most sophisticated at doing that particular angle. And then we do the dynamic pricing, which is we alter your price relative to that midpoint over time, and that's the dynamic pricing piece of it. So we do both of those things, and not to get too nerdy here, Jasper, but on the first piece, coming up with that initial price, we do several things. One is we look at historical data on occupancy and pricing. So if a listing has some good data there, we'll use that method. And the reason we do that is because, the market is really the best sort of judge of what a place is worth, right? We all kind of tend to think our own place is particularly special and should command a higher price. And sometimes that's right, but it's always good to check what the market actually thinks. So we use that valuation method. If we don't have a lot of data there, we'll go to your comps and we'll come up with a valuation based on your comps. So those are, the similar listings to what yours is. And then you can also bring in, if you want to, just your Airbnb base price would be sort of the other method that we would use. So that was something I wanted to mention to people, because that coming up with that initial price is really important. When you come into Everbooked, we do that for you. You take a look at it, you look at the Everbooked calendar, and if you think there's some adjustment needed there, you can make that adjustment. Apart from that, Jasper, I just want to let your folks know that we have lots of resources on our website. We've got a partners page that includes, get paid for your pad. We've got an FAQ. We have support on our website. We man that whenever we can. We're a fairly lean team, but when we're not there, you can leave us an email, and we will get back to you. We just try to provide as much support to people as possible when they come into the into Everbooked and they want to start using our automatic pricing or some of these other tools. Apart from that, Jasper, I think those are probably the main things. Again, we're great day to be talking to you. This Prop F in San Francisco being rejected is really good, not just for the city of San Francisco, but there are so many other cities out there looking to what's happening that's the birthplace of Airbnb. It's kind of a marquee city. So it's really a great day, I think, for Airbnb hosts wherever you are. So Jasper, just good timing that you and I scheduled to talk today.
Yeah, definitely, Doug. It's definitely good news, and hopefully some of the other cities who are considering putting in some sort of similar regulation against Airbnb, maybe they will refrain from doing it now that the one in San Francisco has been rejected. So all in all,
Yeah,
great day for
sorry.
Airbnb.
I think it is, and either they'll refrain from it or they'll learn from it. There are just so many jurisdictions looking at this, so yeah, I think it's a really terrific day for not just for the company but for the hosts that are out there and counting on the income, either to as you've seen a lot with your with your audience, Jasper. A lot of people are doing this so they can stay in their homes, and other people, they like yourself, they do it because they're funding a lifestyle, and both of those things are super important to people. So we're really pleased to be a part of that, and really our overall goal with Everbooked is to help our clients make more money on Airbnb. So that's what we're all about, and it's been great having a chance to talk with you about it.
Always good to talk to you, Doug. Thank you so much for your time. And for all the listeners out there, thank you so much for listening. And of course, if you do want to learn more about Airbnb hosting, go to getpaidforyourpet.com. There's a lot of information out there, a lot of blog posts. You can also go through all the 80 episodes of this podcast that are out there so far. And of course, if you really want to be serious about Airbnb hosting, you go to Amazon, you search for Airbnb, and the first book that will pop up is Get Paid for Your Pet. And we've got a lot of people who've bought the book so far, so I'm very happy about that. We've got 87 reviews so far, which is really a lot on Amazon. So if you've left me a review in the past, thank you so much. We're trying to get up to 100, so if you haven't, really appreciate a review. And we'll see you next week when we have another episode of Get Paid for Your Pet. So thanks for listening, everybody, and until next time.